Summertime is all about topwater. All those search baits that you had tied on in the spring, you will now be searching with topwaters in the summer. That's really the main difference between fishing shallow in the spring and fishing shallow now, is that you are taking your chatter baits, your spinner baits, those type lures that are flashy and give off vibration, and you're putting on topwaters. The main reason being that the fish have seen baits now for 3 or 4 months longer than they have when you first started fishing for them. And for that reason, you need a more realistic looking bait. In the spring, the fish's eyes are out of focus. They've been out in the creek channels, in the main river channel for months, and they're hungry. They know they've got to feed up if they want to spawn in a couple months, so they're eating everything in sight or everything that they can feel through their lateral line. And it's not like that. It's not like that June, July, and August. It is a sight bite that time of year, and they're a little more picky on what they're going to eat because of the fishing pressure. So it's all about a topwater. A topwater bait, just that silhouette of this going over their head. They can't see it really well, and topwater baits just catch bigger fish. I mean, there's a couple of reasons why you're going to throw topwater, and one of them being it catches giants, and the other one being that it's just the most natural looking presentation because they can't get the best look at it. So what are my 4 summer topwater baits? Let's dive into covering water. We need something that I can fish that has a lot of pulling power. The fish will track it all the way back to the boat. Now, there's a couple reasons why this bait will have fish swim all the way back to the boat. They will see that bubble trail. You're throwing it on a humid day. You know, the pressure may be changing and the bubbles come off the back of the blade. And those fish, like they're killing a wounded bait fish or something, there's that disturbance. They see the bubbles and they go and they nail your buzz bait. And this is a bait, really, you can do about everything you do with a frog, but you're fishing it a lot faster. You're a lot more efficient if you need to cover water. So skipping this under docks, skipping it around trees, it's very weedless. You rarely are going to hang it up. And it's just one of those baits that you can throw it about on any lake. You know, it doesn't matter if it's a grass, highland rock, whatever it be. You know, it's gonna work on your lake. So this is one that you need to know. Now, this is imitating a bunch of little shad, you know, a school of baby shad kicking around. If you get in an area where you're seeing big shad, big gizzard shad, big threadfin shad, they're skipping around on top of the water, a topwater walking bait is the best bait you can throw to imitate those. Now, this is also a good search bait. You know, if you're on a highland reservoir where you have a lot of rocky banks and points that come out and you need something that just covers big areas, this is a great bait if you want to throw a topwater. As long as you don't have more than 5 feet of water on top of the fish, they can really track this. They can hear it. It's loud, and they can hunt it down and get it. And again, catches big ones. But I'll also throw this, let's say if we're in the back of a creek somewhere, and you have a little bit of cover, but it's not super cover dense. Maybe there's just a lay down here. You have a little point, comes out over there. You can cover a lot of water, and as long as you don't have to put this in really close quarter fishing, it's fairly weedless, and it allures to those big shad-eating bass. So when you find an area, you know, these are the 2 search baits, cover a lot of water with these baits. Now, once you find a stretch, now in the summertime, fish are going to tend to stay in the same area for the longest time of the year. Maybe only winter being another time where they really stay put. But this time of year, they find their summer haunts, and they're going to ride that out. As long as there's enough bait there to keep them there and not too much fishing pressure, they will stay in these areas. So you got to slow down. Now we're going to keep slinging topwater at them as much as we possibly can. But these are the best ways to slow down and just pick apart every little piece of the area that you're fishing. Now we'll start with the popper. The popper has lost a lot of its fame over the years because the poppin' frogs have become so good. But this bait catches a lot more fish than a frog will. Small fish, whatever size they may be, they're going to commit to this way before they're going to commit to a frog. On top of that, anyone that's fished a frog, they know, they know, we all know how bad your hookup percentage can be on certain days. Some days they may be choking the frog every bite. Some days you may have 10 bites and land one of them. So in those type situations, this bait just does a lot better than that. You also have, a little more realistic feel to the fish, I think. The feather, it's sometimes a smaller profile. You can throw the really little one, and it's just a completely different bait than a poppin' frog, and it still has its place. If I can get this bait in and around the cover without hanging it up, it's going to be a popper for me over a poppin' frog every single time. Now, this is great around brim beds, and this is also great around brim beds. This being probably a little bit better, but if brim are spawning, I'm going to have both rigged up for sure. Now, this is a small prop bait. They come in wooden, they come in plastic. This is one that is plastic, and it tends to work great, so I haven't fooled with the wooden ones a whole lot. I typically will put a feather on the back of this as well, but this is one of those baits that I just don't think the fish see as much as all the other topwaters, and it's the same thing. You can just fish really slow. You can cover every piece of cover and more in your area with a bait like this because of how long you can let it sit, and it's still kind of moving. The blades are kind of turning a little bit, and those fish will just come up underneath it, look at it. Most realistic looking bait you can throw at them, and you're going to catch them. So that's my topwater summertime baits. Now, this is a bait that everyone knows. It's great in the post-spawn. It works in the pre-spawn. A swim jig with that pulsing trailer, so you can shake your jig, put it on braided line, and post-spawn magic. Now, this time of year, I've seen it work. I've seen it work in July and August as well, when a lot of guys are just frogging, throwing a buzzbait, pretty much doing what I just showed you, maybe throwing a worm in there. That swim jig is my next favorite, or my most favorite, subsurface bait that time of year. Now, talked about losing fish on a frog. That swim jig, they can just get it a lot better. It's quick, it's coming through their face almost as fast as a topwater, but the whole bait is submerged, so they can just see it, feel it, and get it in their mouth a little bit better. So if you're losing some fish on a frog, try that swim jig. Have that rigged up. That's really a bait that works great in the pre-spawn and the post-spawn, but I don't ever take it off my rod for the whole year because it'll start working again really well in the fall. But whatever reason, I've seen that work because what tends to happen in the summer, you have those fish, they're going to move out to their first spot, if it's a post-spawn place or just their first stop in the summer. Now, these type places are those places that are usually good every single year. They're places that there's going to be a lot of bait and typically a lot of fish wanting to gravitate to those spots. Now, after they've been there for a little bit, now we're getting into June, July, August, those fish are going to start fizzling off. They're going to start suspending off the bottom, and those places that had mega schools will be just 3, 4, 5 fish schools. Once we get later into the year, have they eaten all the bait? Have they been fished for too much? Whatever the reason may be, those fish are starting to trickle off those places. Now, if it's a grass fishery, they're going to get heavy into the grass. If it's a place that has current, they're going to stay near that current. If they're in the backs of the creeks, those are fish that don't tend to move around a whole lot. They live their whole lives back there. Now, there's plenty of cool water. If you have some runoff that kind of comes out of the hillside or mountain, those steeper lakes, or just lakes that may have, be down in a valley, but there's some cooler water in the backs of those creeks, that's where this swim jig really plays. And I don't necessarily know why it does, but I've made this mistake where I'm catching them on a frog, I'm catching them on a buzzbait, and the topwater bite's really good back there, and I don't think to throw that swim jig. And either I'm losing fish on a frog, or I'm just not fishing those fish hard enough. There's places where you can throw a frog, throw a buzzbait, but you can also throw this, or at least follow up on some short strikes with those topwaters with this. You know, you can also skip a wacky rig and stuff like that back on short strikes, but it seems like you got to get those fish to react. If that's the case, this is a great follow-up bait. But for whatever reason, you get in that cooler water in the backs of the creeks this time of year, don't be afraid to try that swim jig, because it's really a magic bait in those scenarios. So good luck to you guys. Try what I told you. Let me know if it works in the comments, and I'll see you on the water.